Investment committee meetings are a great place for plan sponsors to discuss the latest trends in defined contribution plans, from investments to plan design to communications and education. But one area that we know that plan sponsors focus on is fees. And joining me now is Cammack Retirement Group consultant Jennifer Stevens. Jen, thanks for joining us on the show today. You're actively working with plan sponsors, you're attending committee meetings, and you're reviewing and analyzing plan fees and delivering a message to plan sponsors. But in your estimation, do plan sponsors fully understand what makes up a fee?
Well, the answer is no, and what's really interesting is that fees have been a really hot topic in the industry for years now, and we really don't see that slowing down. It kind of started off as, you know, what are you paying for fees, and can we get that lower, and is it competitive in the marketplace? And overall, in the last, 5 or 6 years, we've seen fees drastically lowered in the industry in general. But the next sort of logical step now, as a plan sponsor, if you know what it is you're paying and you feel that it's reasonable in light of the level and quality of services that you're getting, the next logical step is, okay, well, who's actually paying those fees and how are they being generated? And to your point, a lot of plan sponsors don't know the answer to that. So when we're meeting with them in our investment committee meetings, especially when we're talking about fees, what we normally do is we kind of include some basics just to sort of help them understand where that money is being generated from. So typically in most plans, the investment options are generating revenue, which then pays that record-keeping fee. And a little bit more specifically, let's take a mutual fund, for example, has an expense ratio. Portion of that goes back to the investment manager to manage the assets, and another portion of that is what we call revenue share. And the revenue share actually pays for the record-keeping fee for the plan. And what's very interesting is that revenue share amounts can vary very drastically from investment to investment in any given plan. So as you can maybe see where I'm going with this, some of them are very high, some of them are low and even zero revenue sharing. So what that means is that a participant in a higher revenue share fund is somehow subsidizing those participants that are investing in the lower revenue share paying funds. So it's a logical sort of progression to go this route, and I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about that as the conversation about fees just continues.
So, some great points. In our conversations, I know we talk to clients and they often get confused between the weighted average expense ratio, and they always will say, well, how come my plan is more expensive, or what kind of is made up of the weighted average expense ratio, and then what component is record keeping? And I think and I want to get your opinion on this, there's certainly a lot of education that we need to do as consultants and advisors to really drill down and explain, okay, well, the weighted average expense ratio is really an amalgamation of all how participants invest. So if they're heavily invested in one lower cost investment, it's going to drive down costs. As part of your committee meetings, how much time do you spend? I mean, do you spend a lot of time, a little time, really getting into the weeds with, kind of discussing or educating about these different plan costs?
Well, in general, we talk about cost at every meeting, but we really drill down pretty much once a year. And in that meeting, when we're talking, our annual fee review, we're talking about, like I mentioned before, we're including basics so that they understand where the fees are coming from, what they are, the difference between a weighted plan expense ratio, revenue share, the different components of what your participants are actually paying. And we also go through a benchmarking exercise where we say, is your fee reasonable overall? A lot of times what that ends up doing is it sort of leads to additional questions, which is great, in terms of equitability, in terms of, are all our participants paying in equitable amounts? And usually the answer is no for the most part. And there are ways to make it more equitable, but that's this conversation that we're having as advisors.
Absolutely. Jen Stevens, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.